Hello, and welcome back. This is part 2 of our look into Florence Nightingale. Last time we focused on question 1 about her as a person and how she grew up. Today's focus is our second question. Let's remind ourselves what were our key findings. So when in the past are we learning about? We're going to travel back in time from now to a time when there were no televisions, no aeroplanes, no cars, and you can see here, this is when Florence Nightingale was born. We learned that Florence came from a wealthy family and that gave her more opportunities. She was lucky because she could afford and had the chance to travel around. And she had a clear view about what she wanted to do with her life. Now it's time to look at answering our second key question. Why should we remember her? So let's think about, what is a significant individual? We need to think about two questions. The first, did she change lives at the time? And has her work continued to change lives since then? So, the Crimean War was her moment to shine. But what was the Crimean War? This was fought between the Russian Empire against Britain, France and some other countries. It lasted from October 1853 to February 1856. Soldiers that were injured faced awful conditions, and sadly many were dying of infections because they weren't cared for properly. You can see the Crimea marked on our map inside the orange box. What did she do about it? Well, the war became her central focus when she found out about the conditions. There you can see the war began on our timeline. And in October 1854, she and some other nurses that she had trained, who remember were all volunteers and didn't get paid, went to Crimea with permission from Sidney Herbert. Do you remember him? She met him on her travels and advised him. Now he authorised her to go and help people out. How did she make a difference? Well, first, she sent a plea to a newspaper called The Times, which still exists today, to solve the poor conditions. A great inventor called Brunel created a pre-built hospital that was shipped to the war. The death rate was 1/10, which is much, much lower than before. According to a book from 1885, Florence reduced the death rate massively by introducing hygiene in the hospitals she worked at, like hand washing. Doesn't that sound simple? But at the time, it was a big step. During the war, she gained the famous nickname, the Lady with the Lamp. After the war had finished, she wasn't done yet. When she returned, a Nightingale Fund was established to train nurses to say thank you for her work in the war. Donations were very generous and allowed her to set up the Nightingale Training School in 1860. It's still there and part of a university today. The first trained nurses began working in hospitals in May 1865. She introduced the first ever trained nurses into workhouses. That's where poor children with no homes lived and worked. Now this was a big change because before they were looked after by other paupers or people at the workhouse. Do you remember what we said about her as a person? She had strong opinions, was stubborn and knew powerful people that could help get things done. Certainly paid off here, didn't it? America's first trained nurse was mentored by Florence Nightingale. She introduced nursing schools in her own country and made a positive difference there. After 20 years, several Nightingale nurses were in charge of important hospitals in Britain and even one in Sydney in Australia on the other side. Even when she was ill, she did amazing work on hospital planning and improving conditions for people. So what have we learned? Her personality helped her achieve lots because remember, the time when she lived did not see women as equal. She was lucky her father believed girls should be educated because most weren't. Aren't we lucky that everyone learns today? She made a positive contribution to soldiers in the Crimea, introduced professional nursing to the UK and then the wider world. So, because of her work, the quality of care people got was improved and more people got better. Remember, she had a strong personality and, from a young age, knew she wanted to help people. Let's take a look at our key question, shall we? Last week, we learned about who was she? And we've started thinking about why should we remember her. But we're not done yet. There's more to look into. Our final section next week is going to look at how can we see her legacy today. Does her work and ideas still get used? That's going to be the final part of our answer. Thanks very much for listening, and I'll see you again soon.